hard to chew. My love to 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 so hard to chew. My love to
This is a rally that took place on Friday in Yemen against Israel. Folks, wait till you see the size of the crowd. See, Americans, Westerners, we have no idea that other parts of the world are gathering in massive numbers to denounce Israel and the United States for what they believe is genocide against the Palestinian people.
That crowd that you're looking at there, Rick, is an estimated 2.2 million people that assembled for this particular rally here.
Which is the size of the entire Gaza population.
Right.
So think of this as for every Gazan, one Yemeni showed up representing that Gazan in a protest to denounce who? The United States and Israel. So here is a massive outpouring of fury against Israel and the United States and support for the Gazans. And it's an indication of how quickly World War III is spreading, expanding, intensifying. Again, Americans don't know anything about this because you don't see this on Fox News or CNN. They don't want you to know that millions of people are enraged over U.S. foreign policy.
Atau can you press rest for? Oke, let's go. Mula-mula panaskan kualinya biar licin, kemudian masukkan 5 kg minyak masak, kemudian ambil bawang putih, ketuk, cincang, kemudian tumis, kacau-kacau, kemudian ambil 1 kilo cili, kemudian ketuk, cincang, kemudian masukkan kacau-kacau, kemudian ambil sebiji telurmu, pecahkan, kemudian lempar, kemudian kacau-kacau, kemudian ambil 1 entong sayu, nasi besti, campak, kemudian kacau-kacau, kacau, kemudian tambahkan saus tiram, saus cili, kicap asin, tambahkan 1 sendok zakum, garam, ajina mantra, kemudian kacau sampai api naik ke permukaan, kacau, and siap, kemudian lempar ke atas pinggang geng, siap, ini dia fried rice Yahudi, kemudian
generational problem. All the polling I've seen, ADL's polling, ICC's polling, independent polling, suggests this is not a left-right gap, folks. The issue in the United States in support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Taglit, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this, fast. Because again, we've been chasing this left-right divide. It's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, and the Hamas and their accomplices, the useful idiots in the West, are falling in line in ways that are terrifying. Last thing I'll just say, we saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists here in America on October the 8th. The language of groups that we've long tracked who've long been problematic, like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace, they flipped like this and went to like Iranian propaganda. The language I could show you from their toolkits, because our analysts are in their groups. We saw this again on October the 8th. It was that fast. Like the language in their toolkits was all about the Zionist entity and lots of other language that we recognized from Iranian propaganda.
In my last video, I showed that the Zionists are trying to buy TikTok, but has anyone looked at who brought the bill in the first place and who pays him? Because I just did. Here, check this out. This is the bill right here. Representative Mike Gallagher. That would be this charming devil right here. And if we look at his top contributors for this election cycle, Palantir and Google are at the top with $44,000 and $40,000, but right there, that's AIPAC with $17,000. But wait, there's more. We're gonna switch this to the last election cycle in 2022 and scroll down. And would you look at that? His top contributor that got him elected in 2022 was AIPAC with $44,000 contribution. If you didn't know, that's the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, the Zionist lobby group that doesn't need to register as a foreign agent because they refuse to. So just to clarify, the TikTok ban bill was introduced by a guy whose some of his top contributions are coming from the Zionists and from Google and Palantir, top tech companies associated with the CIA and Mossad. And now Mnuchin's trying to buy it, and ever since he stopped being Treasury Secretary for Trump, his business model is basically just ally with as many Zionists as humanly possible. People like David Friedman, people like the ex-chief of Mossad, Yossi Cohen, getting board seats on companies like Cyber Reason, an Israeli tech cyber company, which it's worth noting also has a Google person on their board, as well as Lockheed Martin. I mean, I'm speculating here. These are not facts, but it's looking more and more like...
This means, in the case of an American Negro, born in that glittering republic, and in the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white, and since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock, around the age of 5 or 6 or 7, to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you, 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 that the Indians were you.
So a couple days ago, New York Governor Kathy Hochul decided to pull a stunt that shows, I think, in increasingly clear capacity that more than any Democrat or Republican, this year it's really just fascism on the ballot. She decided to pull in hundreds of National Guardsmen into the New York subway stations to mandatorily search through people's bags and equipment. And if you refuse those searches, if you exercise your Fourth Amendment rights, you just don't get to use the publicly funded subways. Okay, great. It is incredible the speed at which we careened past shutting down libraries to keep operating the most well-funded police force in the world to armed servicemen are now going to mandatorily check your bags to enter a fucking subway. And it's not as if New York has gotten uniquely more dangerous. The crime rate has plummeted decade over decade since the 80s. The only difference is that now fascism is being normalized. New York, LA, Atlanta, it is not just in red areas, in red states where we're seeing fascism proliferate. It is happening all across the country. The era of dying on your feet rather than living on your knees is not coming, it's here.
My food contains glucose, the fuel that feeds the trillions of healthy cells in my body. But that glucose also feeds something else. Zombie cells. Old, damaged cells that have lingered beyond their useful life. By spewing toxic sludge, these zombies infect other healthy cells, speeding up the aging process. Everything from hair loss and wrinkles to the onset of arthritis, cancer, and dementia. But what scientists have realized is that when we fast and cut off the supply of glucose, that zombie army is starved of energy, which saps them of their power. When food is plentiful, our body stores excess energy in the form of fat, under the skin and around the internal organs. When food is scarce, that fat is sent to the liver, where it's turned into an alternative fuel source called a ketone. And it's these ketones which provide the emergency power source, not only for our bodies, but also our brains.
Then why aren't you letting go?
I guess I'm not at that point right now.
No. Listen again. There is no such thing as not being at that point. That really doesn't have any meaning at all. If you are not letting go of something that you say you wish to let go of, it's because you are choosing to not let go because you believe it serves you. It's not about I'm not at that point yet. It's about the fact that you are deliberately choosing to hold on to it. You have to find out why. And the reason why will always be, yes, always be, you have defined that holding on to it is beneficial. How does it benefit you to hold on to this thing you say you don't prefer?
You know, the safety net, that might be part of it. But
so you feel you need one because you fear that what will happen? What? What will happen if you just let go?
Natural flavors come from nature, but not necessarily from what the label implies. They extract its flavor molecules from the fruit on the tree. Then back in the lab, they mimic Mother Nature's molecules with chemicals.
So what we do is just manipulate them and create with them and give the impression of, papaya.
These are super sniffers, super tasters. They are plotting how to move the flavors they find in this grove to your supermarket shelf and then on to your stomach.
In our fruit flavors, we're talking about we want, a burst in the beginning and maybe a finish that doesn't linger too much so that you want more of it.
And you don't want to long linger because you're not going to eat more of it if it lingers.
But that suggests something else.
Exactly.
Which is called addiction.
Exactly.
You're trying to create an addictive taste.
It's a good word.
Or something that they want to go back for again and again.
Food companies know that flavor is what makes repeat customers.
All parasites are susceptible to electrical charge. They really don't like it. The interesting thing is healthy cells don't mind electrical charge. Remember, they are electrical. And so what happens is, this is DC current, keep in mind, it's not AC current. What happens is, because of the amount of electricity, which is very small, flowing through these tubes, it will actually kill off the parasites. And that's all types of parasites. That's worms, bacteria, amoeba, fungi, candida, all of these things react in a negative way to electricity. The healthy cells are strengthened by it. So while you're strengthening the healthy cells by raising the electrical potential of the body, you're also suppressing or even destroying the parasites. Another thing to keep in mind is virtually all toxins in the body are positively charged. Now, if you remember earlier, I spoke about the cell membrane is negatively charged. So let's picture here the cell membrane carrying a negative charge. Here you have a toxin carrying a positive charge. They will adhere. Opposites will attract. A lot of people will go on cleansing programs, and that's a good thing. But a much more effective way of cleansing the body is to introduce a stronger negative charge. And that's what we do here with the photon sound beam. By introducing this stronger negative charge, the positively charged toxin will simply disassociate from the cell membrane, combine with the negative charge of the electron, create a neutral molecule, and be placed into solution for elimination. I've seen healing experiences, I've seen a lot of them now, that would normally have taken months on a healing, cleansing type of protocol, take only days or even hours. And it happened to me as well. Another thing to consider is that your body has two fluid systems. You have the blood system and you have the lymphatic system. The blood system travels through the various arteries and veins in the body and delivers oxygen and nutrients to the cell. The lymphatic system draws away all of the residue, all of the debris, all of the waste material that the body uses in cellular respiration. The difference is the bloodstream has a heart, it has a pump, and that is what propels the blood through the body. But the lymphatic system doesn't have that. The only thing that moves the lymphatic system is motion. The problem is when you're not feeling well, you really don't feel like getting up and jumping on a trampoline or going out for a jog, do you? And so how do we get that lymphatic system to move and to do its job of cleansing the cells? The cells are swimming in this sea of fluid. Well, that lymphatic system is a saline or salty solution. Now, every time this device pulses, it's sending this electrical charge into the body, which causes a pulsating of the lymphatic system, moving it gently back and forth, cleansing the cells in the body, removing the debris. Hence, a much, much more effective cleansing over the whole body. So there we really have it. We have oxygenation, we have ozonation, we have raising of the electrical field, the electrical potential. All of these things are accomplished with a simple application every day. Most of these devices today are not grounded on solid research. This has over 100 years of solid research behind it, and thousands upon thousands and thousands more cases of people being healed by this.
It's showtime.
Study the science and get rid of the fiction. That's what it's all about. So you being able to read more parts of your DNA has everything to do with your relationship with your histones. These particular histones wind up the DNA, make a chromosome. Chromosomes are nothing more than a platted or organized form of your DNA fiber. Now, once you have the chromosome and you look at the tips of the chromosome, you have something called telomeres. So the same way the chromosome has two arms pointing up and two arms pointing down, if you look at those as hands and feet, that means the hands and feet of the chromosome represents the telomere. Age or senescence is directly proportional to the length of your telomeres. If you break through something called the Hayflick limit, which allows you to keep your telomeres long or even elongate them, you have now figured out a way to stay long for stay young for a longer period of time. So
is based on trade. It's simple. Everybody's just trading out there. There's a few wars, but basically it's trade. And what is the most valuable item in all that trade? DNA. And what's the most valuable item in the DNA is the ones who have a soul. Why did the Greys and the Dracos pay the ones who tricked MJ12 to only abduct those with indigenous blood? They were after the lucid dreamers. Why? Because they knew the Grail, the implosion in that blood was big bucks. I mean, high leverage. I mean, high value. I mean, tornado steering.
Just open it up so they can visually see it.
I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course you gotta watch me. I'm trying to backdoor you, nigga. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I'm always saying slick shit and passing it off as a joke. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I'm gonna ask you for money, and if you say no, I'm gonna tell everybody you not shit and you owe me money. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I put you onto a plug I knew was gonna rob you. We split the money. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I see your posts on Instagram. I'm the one reporting it. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course you changed up and you don't fuck with niggas no more. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I can't beat you in a fight. If I could, I would have been told you it was smoke, nigga. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course if I see you cheating on your girl, I'ma tell her. I wanted her since y'all met. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I'm friends with niggas you don't like. We praying on your downfall. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course if I get jammed up for some shit with the feds, I'm giving them your name. If somebody gonna go down, I'd rather it be you. I'm your hating ass homeboy. Of course I try to fuck with every bitch you stop messing with. We got shit in common. We all don't like you.
I wanted to ask you about the Oscars.
Well, Oscar, one day when you got some time, look up one of the brilliant minds that ever lived. Oscar Micheaux. The one night, it's the biggest television audience in the world. It's the Oscars. Where you think that name came from?
Oscar Micheaux. Oscar didn't care about Hollywood or racist American laws. He broke all the rules. Every evening, Oscar would write his hardships into stories. His stories became so popular that his novel, The Homesteader, garnered the attention of a Los Angeles film company. They negotiated a deal with Oscar to adapt the book into a movie. When the film company refused to allow Oscar to be a part of the production, Oscar changed his mind. He decided to produce the film himself. With no previous experience, Oscar Micheaux wrote, produced, and directed The Homesteader. The Homesteader premiered on February 2nd, 1919 to a packed 8,000-seat theater in Chicago.
Telekinesis.
Let me see, cause I think you tripping. You not do what the heck? You not doing that. You are not doing. Oh.
We'll start with opening statements, then move into our witnesses. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. Big government was colluding with big tech to censor Americans. That's the first thing we learned. But now it's big government colluding with big banks and big business to spy on everything Americans buy, every place they go, everything they do. Big government wants your financial data because it's full of sensitive information about you. Our investigation started when an FBI whistleblower, George Hill, came forward and talked to the committee. Mr. Hill was supervisory intelligence analyst at the FBI up in the Boston field office, told the committee that the FBI got information from Bank of America. Specifically, it received a list of any customer who made purchases in the Washington, D.C. area January 5th through 7th, 2021. The whistleblower supervisor, special agent in charge of the Boston field office, Mr. Bonavolanta, corroborated Mr. Hill's testimony when he spoke to the committee. And so did Steve Jensen, the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section Chief. But it wasn't just purchase data around a specific date that the FBI got from Bank of America. That was actually also overlaid with any firearm purchase at any time. And how did the FBI get this information? They asked for it. In fact, you can see on the display on the screen here the email that was sent. The FBI told Bank of America, to recap our morning call, we are prepared to action immediately the following threshold: customers confirmed as transacting business in Washington, D.C. between these specific dates. So if you're in Washington, D.C., visiting your kids, maybe visiting your aunt, or maybe just a friend, the FBI wanted to know about every single purchase you made. And if you're a gun owner, look out, you're going to the top of the list. For simply exercising your Second Amendment right, you're on the FBI's target list. And never forget, the federal government got this information without any process. No warrant, and frankly, no notification. The bank didn't tell the customer that we're handing this information over to the FBI, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world. Now, these FBI agents, Mr. Hill, Mr. Bonavolanta, Mr. Jensen, they all said this was wrong and, in fact, sent the information back to FBI headquarters in D.C. So that's how our investigation began. But since then, and we continue to investigate, but since then, we've learned that the financial surveillance was broader and there was actually a specific objective. The federal government is building profiles on the American people. And the profile isn't based on criminal conduct, it's based on political beliefs. And if you got the wrong political beliefs, well, you're potentially a domestic violent extremist. Now, how are they actually doing this? What are the mechanics of this? There's this entity we've discovered called the Domestic Security Alliance Council, kind of Orwellian in sound and title, the DSAC. And this is an entity where the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, works with 650 of the largest companies in the world. These companies have to do over $1 billion in revenue a year. They represent 2/3 of the gross domestic product of the United States economy. And they work through this controlled access portal. We'll put that on the screen here. What are they sharing in this secret portal? Well, we're not exactly sure because it's secret. But we do know that they share some information, share reports. And one of the reports we got, called a liaison information report, said this: any American who opposes firearm legislation, the easing of immigration restrictions, and COVID mandates is someone banks should be watching because, again, they might be an extremist. Now stop and think about that for a second. I mean, just in other words, if you're against gun registration, you're for a secured border, you oppose lockdowns and vaccine mandates, you're a domestic violent extremist, according to the FBI, and the government should get your data, should get your financial data. It actually gets worse. The federal government and banks also use what they call merchant category codes to flag Americans that shop at places like Bass Pro Shop and Cabela's. They flagged Americans who bought religious text. We can show you that one too. Because everybody knows if you want a secure border and you oppose COVID lockdowns, then you probably shop at Bass Pro Shops and you read your Bible, and of course all that makes you an extremist. Literally, that is the logic that you see displayed from the information we've been able to gather thus far in our investigation. Now remember, these are also the same folks who just a couple years ago told us if you're a parent showing up at a school board meeting, you're a terrorist. If you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. Now, of course, if you oppose lockdowns, vaccine mandates, want a secure border, don't want gun registration, you're in that category as well. This is scary where things are headed. We've seen the censorship. Now we see what's happening with big banks and big government relative to your financial data. Again, all this being done with no process, no warrant, no notification to the customer that the banks are actually supposed to serve. Big government's not supposed to use big tech to censor Americans, and big government shouldn't be working with big banks to target Americans for behavior that is legal and constitutional. And that's the concern. That's why we're having this hearing. We'll get to our guest here in a second. But with that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement before we get to our witnesses.
Seen it before, we've seen it in TV shows and movies and books. Now, however, we might actually see it in the real world. Take a look. Solving crimes before they happen.
And send a protection team as soon as we lock location.
It is called pre-crime, and it's a concept made famous by the 2002 movie Minority Report. In the film, and the short story it was based on, psychics tip off authorities about murders before they happen, so that police can arrest the would-be murderers before anybody dies.
We've got a third party.
The film is set in 2054, 30 years from now, but experts say pre-crime predictions are already possible, and we don't need psychics to make them. We just need artificial intelligence, AI. Data analysts and social scientists at the University of Chicago say that they've developed an algorithm that can predict future crimes 1 week in advance. They loaded it with 3 years' worth of data, focusing on violent crimes like homicide and assault, and property crimes like burglary and car theft. Then the algorithm divided the city into tiles, roughly 1,000 feet apart, and calculated hotspots based on where the recent crimes happened. A week later, when the team reviewed the actual police blotters, they found that 90% of Chicago's murders, assaults, and thefts had happened in the hotspots selected by the algorithm. They tried the model in 7 other cities, and the results were almost identical. But what about catching or even preempting the perps? It turns out the algorithm can help with that too. Chicago police used it to compile a list of people who might one day be involved in a violent crime, either as a victim or a perpetrator. The list was made up of people who spent time in one of the algorithm's hotspots and whose demographics, their age, gender, and race, match criminals and victims of the past. Other AI crime models take it a step further. For years now, judges and parole officers have been using artificial intelligence to calculate an inmate's chance of reoffending. Factors at play in those algorithms include prior convictions, education, and past employment. The model then calculates just how likely that person is to commit another crime and what crime it might be. The ultimate goal, say the promoters of AI-based crime fighting, is to combine these models to pinpoint where a crime might happen, who the victim might be, and which potential suspects were in the area at the time. And on paper, it just seems like a great idea. So why aren't we doing it? Well, it turns out there's a flaw in those models. It's us. It's human beings. Since the algorithms are chewing on data from people, they have the very same blind spots and biases that people have. The crime hotspots that were pinpointed in Chicago and the other cities were mostly Black and Latino neighborhoods. The list of potential victims and suspects included 56% of the Black men in Chicago, whether they had criminal backgrounds or not. And the algorithms used for parole decisions were far more likely to label white inmates incorrectly as low risk than inmates of color. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a future for pre-crime predictions. Experts say the best way to fix the bad data is with more data. The more information an AI system gets, the more time it gets to learn, and the better it will be at spotting the prejudices and flaws in our own minds. But that could take a while, probably decades. We may even have to wait until 2054.
Is the Vatican Church hiding a time machine? In 2002, a French Catholic priest named Francois Brune wrote that a device called the chronovisor was being held in the archives of the Vatican. This device, using an advanced technology, was said to be able to pick up unscrambled electromagnetic radiation emitted by past events, which would then allow the user to essentially see into the past. It was quickly confiscated and kept in the Vatican archives, as the Pope deemed it dangerous. The team that invented the device, consisting of Pellegrino Ornetti, Nobel Prize winner Enrico Fermi, and NASA space program scientist Wernher von Braun, were able to produce photo evidence, supposedly witnessing the crucifixion of Christ. Even after this, they were quickly shut down and branded as a hoax. However, soon after, a law was passed in the Vatican stating that anyone who was caught using a time-manipulating device will be excommunicated from the church. If the chronovisor was just a hoax,